afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for your attendance today. I'm Dr. Martha Jallim-Hall, and I'm the chairperson for the advisory committee for Mr. Devan Blackwell, doctoral candidate in the educational management program at Hampton University. Today, Dr. Syreeta Cason, who is the co-chair of this committee, will preside over this dissertation proceeding. Dr. Cason?
It's actually Dr. Cotton this
I'm
time.
sorry, Dr. Cotton will preside over
I
the
know we're one
dissertation.
and the same. I know you guys
I
get us
know.
confused.
I throw everything to the two of you. I'm so sorry.
All right.
All right.
Although Dr. Cason is on the committee, but all right. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dr. Wendy Cotton, and I serve as the co-chair of this advisory committee. Kindly ensure that your cell phones are on vibrate mode. And for those participating via Zoom,
turn it off.
please mute your microphones. Let's see, who do we need to mute? You got Dr. Cason?
I'm not a co-host yet.
Oh, well, that's problematic. Hold on. I can't even find you. Let me make you a co-host so you
Yeah, where is she? I can't find
If I
her.
speak, do I pop up? Do you see me now on my box?
I see you, but I don't have the ability to
Wait,
make
let me
you
see.
co-host.
Where are you? Oh, there you are. There you are.
Mhm.
All right. There you go.
All
All
right.
done? Okay, thank
All
you.
done.
Sorry about that.
The purpose for today's defense is to give the doctoral candidate an opportunity to present his research demonstrating a thorough understanding of the subject matter. This presentation will allow him to articulate each aspect of his research process, fulfilling the academic requirements of the Doctor of Philosophy degree. Qualifications of the advisory committee per university guidelines. The committee selection process involves a collaborative consultation between the student, the advisory committee, and the chair of the dissertation. A doctoral dissertation committee must consist of at least 4 members, which may include 1 member from outside the program or an external member, subject to approval by the academic dean, Dr. Melinda Malone Cologne. The majority of the committee must be composed of Hampton University faculty. For the Department of Education, all members must hold a terminal degree, and the committee chair must be a Hampton University faculty member within the discipline. The advisory committee is tasked with ensuring that the dissertation meets rigorous research standards. We are responsible for approving the research topic and methodology, and we meticulously review and provide detailed feedback on the manuscript drafts, assessing the validity and quality of data and evidence presented. Our collective effort ensures the candidate is thoroughly prepared for the oral examination and defense of his research. According to the university's thesis and dissertation manual, research involving human subjects, any research involving human subjects and/or animals must be reviewed and approved by the Hampton University's Institutional Review Board. This process, along with the approval number, must be included in the thesis and in the dissertation. Students participating in funded research activities must complete the test-based training course, Responsible Conduct of Research. The committee certifies that both of these processes have been completed and reflected in the candidate's manuscripts, as these are federal requirements. Before proceeding further, we would like to take a moment to express our sincere gratitude to the committee for their dedicated efforts, valuable insights, unwavering commitment to supervising this research. Your guidance and support have been instrumental in helping the candidate navigate the complexities of this research journey and achieve this significant milestone. Your personal investment in both the academic and professional development of the candidate has not gone unnoticed, and we deeply appreciate the time and expertise you have brought to this process. Allow me now to introduce the esteemed members of the committee. Dr. Martha Jallim-Hall is the chair of the advisory committee, and she is the associate professor in the Department of Education. Dr. Syreeta Cason is a committee member and adjunct assistant professor in the Department of Education and the Department of Counseling. Dr. Stephanie Johnson is an adjunct assistant professor. She is also the former chair of the department and program coordinator, I believe. And Dr. Stephanie Williams, she is an external member, but she is a licensed professional counselor and high school counselor in Henry County Schools in the metropolitan Atlanta area. And I am the co-chair of the advisory committee, assistant professor in the Department of Education. We also have university administrators present, and we would like to introduce those administrators that are present to participate and observe the defense. We have Dr. Denise Charbonnet, who is the chairperson of the Department of Education and associate professor. Dr. Ricardo Randall, who is the program coordinator for Hampton University Online. Dr. Katina Ward-James, director of Hampton University Online. We have the former program director, Dr. Tiffany Creighton here, and there are probably so many more. I see Dr. Kendrick, and there are many more guests, and we may give them an opportunity to be recognized and provide comments at the end. So for the procedures, before we introduce the candidate, we would like to take a few minutes to review the process for the oral defense and the final examination. The candidate will begin the formal defense and examination by introducing himself and providing an overview of the academic and of his academic and professional credentials. Following this introduction, he will present his research study, focusing on its relevance and significance. The presentation will cover key elements such as the introduction, statement of the problem, research methodology, and most importantly, the research findings. After the candidate's presentation, either Dr. Jallim-Hall or I will invite questions from the committee members and from the academic community at Hampton University. Once the oral defense and examination have concluded, guests will be asked to step out of the room while the advisory committee deliberates. During this time, the committee will evaluate the candidate's performance on the examination. The final outcome will then be communicated to the candidate, as well as Hampton University Online, the Department of Education, and the School of Liberal Arts and Education. Depending on the committee's decision, the candidate will be required to follow Hampton University's established guidelines to complete the final steps necessary for the degree. Colleagues and guests, I warmly and enthusiastically present to you Mr. Devan Blackwell.
Thank you, Dr. Cotton. Good afternoon, everyone. I see lots of numbers in the participants, and I just want to thank you all for taking the time out of your day to be here today for my oral defense of my dissertation research. Again, my name is Devan Blackwell. I'm a doctoral candidate in the Educational Management program at Hampton University. I bring with me over 2 decades worth of experience in the field of education. I began my career as an after-school program coordinator. I then moved into the elementary education space and taught 5th grade for many years, also taught middle school language arts. The next half of my career, where I'm still currently employed, is for the State Department of Education here in New Jersey, which I've had a few roles. My current role is an education specialist for 2 counties in the southern region. I provide support and guidance to over 40 school districts and then the liaison between those districts and the State Department of Education. I will tell more about myself in the next few slides, but I'd like to take this time now to just, again, Dr. Cotton already gave you the names of my dynamic dissertation advisory committee, whom I would like to thank you all for your guidance, your mentoring, your support, and your encouragement. Dr. Jallim-Hall, Dr. Cotton, Dr. Cason, Dr. Johnson, and Dr. Williams, I could not be here without you. And I really appreciate you, and I really mean that. The title of my dissertation is Film as a Pedagogical Tool for Empathy-Based Learning in Middle School Social Studies. So I discussed a bit about my career in education, my 20 plus years, but even before that, I was what's known as a cinephile. That is a lover of cinema, a lover of film. For as far back as I can remember, I was in a movie theater. And I didn't have the words for it at the time, but film was my introduction to social awareness. It was my early lesson also in communications. Films exposed me to different people from walks of life, different cultures. And I used film as the teaching tool. I learned about those folks from different walks of life, different from my own. And back in those days, the films I watched, there wasn't a lot of representation. I didn't see people who looked like myself, which meant I had to find some way to identify with the characters I saw on screen, regardless of what they looked like. And I was able to achieve that. And from that, I connected with those characters. Even though I knew film was mostly make-believe, I felt for them. When they struggled, I worried about them. When they were sad, I was concerned. I didn't know the word for it at the time, but that was empathy. So from there, it planted the seed that film could potentially be a tool for transformative learning in teaching and learning, which has led me to this study. I'd like to introduce the study, and I just would like to also say that in the dissertation version, the manuscript of this study, it begins with 6 words. Those words are one nation, under God, losing empathy. Now, that's not hyperbole. It's not melodramatic. Research has shown there's an empathy decline in America. It's been documented by several researchers. Empathy-based learning is an approach to education that addresses the decline in empathy. Empathy-based learning, also known as EBL in this study, can help students connect with people from different cultures and backgrounds, which can be valuable in global society. The findings of several researchers suggest a positive influence between EBL on students in social studies education in particular. The problem statement is social studies is one of the most important courses in the curriculum, as students are made to acquire the information, the skills, and values that are required to become effective citizens. But research also indicates that the time spent on the subject is declining across the nation. Considering the impact that teaching empathy in social studies content is believed to have on positive student outcomes, the denial of such opportunities for young people to cultivate those competencies is concerning, and thus creates a problem that's just not a local problem. It's a national problem. It's a global problem, as every person listening to this right now will be impacted by a generation of people who might not have the skills to be empathetic. The problem background. Since the early 1900s, the broad field of social studies education has led the charge of democracy education, democracy with a small d, not the political party, democracy education in American public schools. But the curriculum has long been an ideological battleground with debates over its purpose, its nature, and content. Recent criticisms of social studies have implied that there's an insidious connection between the debate over critical race theory, a term that some people have incorrectly used to refer rather to a wide range of distinctly different topics, including educational equity, social emotional learning, and restorative practices. Research shows that students transitioning to middle school show evidence of declines in cognitive empathy. That is a concern. But opportunities for young people across the nation to develop empathy-based learning competencies are denied as a result of the declining instructional time spent on social studies. In a world that so desperately needs more empathy, film use in schools might be a significant step in getting there. And again, that connects to what I said in the previous slide. This is not just a local problem. This is national and it's global. Egan Simon asserts in his study that film can be used as a medium for students' meaning making and the cultivation of empathy around issues related to social studies education. The purpose of this phenomenological qualitative study was to explore the impact of film use as a pedagogical tool for empathy-based learning in middle school social studies education, and to also explore teachers' beliefs regarding the use of film as an instructional tool. This study is significant because it will add to the existing body of literature on empathy-based learning methods and also contribute new findings to the current body of knowledge concerning utilizing film as a teaching medium. Additionally, the study is significant because the achievement of these objectives will involve broadening the conversation in educational institutions nationwide regarding the capacity of film education to provide a contextual framework for specific elements of the curriculum. So there are 4 theoretical frameworks that you see here. Transformative learning theory underpins this study, but there were 3 other theories that supported it. One is film theory, narrative empathy theory, social science theory. I want to focus on transformative learning theory. Within this study, empathy-based learning is conceptualized within this framework. Transformative learning is the process of effecting change in a frame of reference. To provide an example of this for you, most adults, we've acquired a coherent body of experience, associations, concepts, values, feelings, conditioned responses that define our life world. These frames of reference are the structures of assumptions through which we understand our experiences and selectively shape and delimit expectations, perceptions, cognition, and feelings. Creswell cautions researchers to identify potential flaws in the study that might limit the generalizations of the findings into a larger population. These are considered limitations. This study had 2 limitations. The first was that the study was limited to schools in New Jersey and included certified teachers of middle school social studies. The second limitation of the study, that was also limited to the beliefs of participants about the use of film as a teaching tool in social studies. These weaknesses in scholarly investigations are imposed on the study by external influences and are beyond the researcher's control. Along with limitations, studies can also be restricted in scope by delimitations. While limitations are imposed by external influences, delimitations are potential weaknesses introduced to the study by the researcher, him or herself, or themselves. In this study, there were 2 delimitations. One was that participants in the study voluntarily completed a pre-questionnaire. They evaluated chosen films and engaged in focus group sessions. The second delimitation of the study is that the researcher, me, selected the films that were screened and evaluated. There are a few operational terms that I wanted to define for you. There are many, but I'm only going to focus on 2. One is empathy. And I bring that to your attention because we all have an idea, hopefully, of the concept of empathy and how it's different from sympathy, which is feeling sorry for someone. Empathy is the capacity to perceive, experience, or comprehend circumstances or feelings of another individual through their lens or perspective. I just wanted to add, our Western idea of the word comes from the Greek word empathia, which combines 2 words, em and pathos. Together, those words mean in feeling, in feeling. The second root of our understanding of the word empathy comes from a German word, Einfühlung, which means feeling into. The second term rather, I wanted to define was perspective taking, which is the ability to view a situation from a viewpoint that is different from one's own viewpoint and or to adopt the perspective of another person. In other words, it's imagining oneself in the literal shoes of another or experiencing life through the lens of an other. Now for chapter 2, the literature review. The literature review was, 4 concepts emerged in this literature review. Of those concepts, there was empathy, the empathy deficit in the United States. The second concept that emerged was EBL in school environments. The third concept was social studies education. And the fourth concept was film as a pedagogical tool. I just want to briefly go over some of the highlights in those areas of each section. When I spoke about the empathy deficit in this country, there are many reasons. The literature has shown that the daily uncertainty that Americans face has led to an increase in anxiety, despair, and other mental health issues. It's just one of the contributors to its empathy deficit. Also, the ongoing culture wars in the United States pose a significant risk of impeding the nation's capacity to capitalize on the wealth of diversity that is already present, and further compounding the erosion of empathy. The second concept generated in the literature review is empathy-based learning. The empathy deficit that our country is experiencing has dire consequences for society at large, democracy, global affairs, and the collective well-being of all citizens. Again, this is local, national, it's global. The third concept that emerged in the literature was the term social studies. Where did it come from? Well, social studies dates back to 1905's the Social Studies in the Hampton curriculum. This curriculum was taught at Hampton Normal and Agricultural Institute in Hampton, Virginia, one of the pioneer colleges for Black students at the time, and incidentally, the university at which this research study is being conducted. The fourth concept, film as a pedagogical tool. Edison believed that film was destined to revolutionize our educational system. Another scholar opined that film had a greater influence on the minds of the general public than any other art. Film use might help adolescents see the similarities between themselves and their peers, while at the same time perceiving differences as paths to new perspectives rather than possible threats. This perspective taking is concomitant with emotional literacy, both fundamental principles of EBL and social studies education. Just one more. I had a lot that I wanted to share from my literature review, but I'm cutting down for time. In concept 1, for the empathy deficit, Rifkin wrote that to empathize is to civilize. To empathize is to civilize. The erosion of empathy in America, along with the deterioration of civility, pose critical threats to democracy and the teaching of diverse perspectives in schools, as researchers have documented how the increasingly divisive and polarizing political climate in this country has sown discord in communities and targeted inclusive curricula. For the second concept, under empathy-based learning, education is a human endeavor, and teachers are the conduit through which lessons of empathy can occur. That quote came to me from Dr. Cotton herself. Schools are a fundamental socialization context for adolescent development. Thus, school authorities, and more specifically, teachers, have a fundamental role in facilitating beneficial intergroup relationships. And one more thing on social studies. The findings of several researchers suggest a positive influence of empathy-based learning on students in social studies. A common argument is that the curriculum should not be about passively absorbing someone else's concept of the world, but rather it should be an exercise in creating a personally meaningful understanding of how one might act to transform that world. And for film as a pedagogical tool, well, when used for pedagogical purposes, films have an unparalleled ability to transcend borders, languages, cultures, weaving narratives that touch the very core of our humanity. A film can enable students to empathize with the life experiences of individuals and communities far removed from their day-to-day reality. Watching films is a successful method for improving empathy in an educational setting. Madsen found that animated films, which were used for this study, in particular animated films, to be an extraordinary creative opportunity, which leads me to the finding from Egan Simon's study, which suggested that short animated films can be used as a powerful medium for meaning making around issues related to social studies education. It is worth noting that many former studies have focused on the use of live action films rather than animated films, which remain an under-researched area of scholarship. Animated scenes offer strong symbolic meaning of theories and concepts, positing that when compared to live action films, animated films are potentially more efficient classroom tool. Now, for chapter 3, my research methodology. The researcher conducted a phenomenological qualitative study. A qualitative study is appropriate when the goal of research is to explain a phenomenon by relying on the perception of a person's experience in a given situation. Phenomenological research is theorized as a way to understand the context of the lived experiences of people, the research participants, and the meaning of their experiences. It is an approach that seeks to understand and describe the universal essence of a phenomenon. Phenomenological research commonly relies on interview, that is, cognitive data, to study meaning. This phenomenological qualitative research study investigated the use of film as a pedagogical tool for empathy-based learning. There were 5 research questions. RQ1 was, how can short animated films be used as a pedagogical tool for the teaching of empathy-based learning? RQ2, what are the pedagogical benefits of using short animated films for the teaching of empathy-based learning? RQ3, what are the challenges associated with using short animated films for the teaching of empathy-based learning? RQ4, what are the beliefs of middle school teachers regarding the use of short animated films as an instructional tool? And RQ5, how can short animated films be used to contextualize empathy-based learning? The research setting included 3 school districts, 1 rural, 1 urban, 1 suburban, in 3 different counties within the state of New Jersey, which incidentally was ranked number 2 in the country for education. The 3 school districts were selected for this study for their diverse populations and their differing socioeconomic landscapes. From our participants, there were 9 middle school educators and instructional coaches, all content area specialists in social studies based on their highly qualified middle school instruction certificate. And all participants had experience teaching or providing instructional support at a middle school in departmentalized social studies classrooms. The sampling strategy used for this study was purposeful because of the specific criteria for each participant and the researcher seeking to ascertain the perspective of each participant. Participants for this study were purposely selected given their common attributes. The sample size for this study was 9 participants, as this selection number reflected and represented the homogeneity that exists among the participants' sample pool. So this was a qualitative study, and I want to explain the instrumentation that was applied. In this qualitative study, where a semi-structured interview, questionnaire, and focus group observations were used to collect data, the overall trustworthiness was based on several classified dimensions to check and establish validity of this study. I'm now going to share the steps that were taken to ensure trustworthiness. There were 4 dimensions. For credibility, prolonged interactions with participants occurred, data was triangulated, and there was theoretical sampling. Under the dimension of transferability, the data was saturated. Rich, detailed information about the context that was being investigated was provided. For the dimension of dependability, data was triangulated using a systematic and well-documented systematic research process. And raw data was organized. And for the dimension of confirmability, the process of coding and analysis was implemented. Also, there was documentation of theoretical and reflective thought, and again, the organization of raw data. These were the steps that were taken to ensure trustworthiness in this qualitative study. The instrumentation included participant questionnaires, participant interviews, and focus group film screenings. These film screenings provided an opportunity to use a combination of semi-structured interviews to explore teachers' understandings of, experiences with, and feelings about the themes of empathy and perspective taking presented in the audiovisual works. The data collection procedure included the researcher meeting with district superintendents and school administrators prior to the distribution of consent forms and participant recruitment happening. There was pre-film screening, interview questionnaires that were emailed to and completed by selected research participants. And again, there were film screenings, which enhanced data collection. And by doing this, I used 3 short animated films, which highlight a particular approach to empathy-based learning. These were screened in order to garner teacher perspectives on the potential educational benefits and limitations of using the medium in the classroom. And now, here are those films that I used. There were 3. The first film was Alike. It was produced in Spain. Alike chronicles the relationship of a father and his son who live in a society in which order and work ethic literally choke the color and creativity out of its inhabitants. Themes of this film included acceptance, dehumanization, diversity, depression, societal rules, and the pursuit of happiness. The second film screen was Bear Story, the tale of a former circus bear who builds an elaborate mechanical diorama to remember the life he used to have with his wife and son before he was taken against his will and enslaved. Themes in that film included grief and loss, enslavement, violence, and war. And the last film was Bear Story was produced in Chile. Bloom was an American production. Bloom relates the story of Nadine, who, depressed and alone, has been living her life in the dark. A gift in the form of a bulb plant from a friendly neighbor gives Nadine something to live for. Themes of this film include depression, mental illness, compassion, hope, kindness, humanity, and emotional well-being. The data analysis procedure followed Braun and Clark's 6-phase approach. Step 1 was becoming acquainted with the data, developing initial codes, searching for themes, reviewing evolving themes, defining and labeling those themes, and a saturation of data, which included continuous comparison among existing codes, concepts, and categories. Ethical considerations. Prior to conducting the study, IRB proposals were submitted to Hampton University and the school division under study. Participants were contacted and informed. Trustworthiness was established. Character labeling was used in place of names. Reports were provided to participants, and all data and material was and still is secured in a locked, safe, and/or password protected computer. So I'd like to share my research findings, but if you allow me just to go back to this data analysis procedure slide, I think it's important to note that when I did my proposal defense, okay, and I discovered Braun and Clark's 6-phase approach, as a neurodivergent person, someone who learns differently. I learn through connections and concepts. And I used a film actually to help me understand this. And that film is The Wizard of Oz. And if you all remember the classic 1939 film, the filmic technique used in that film was the first few scenes of the film, the first part of the film was in black and white. And then after the cyclone came, the door opened up and it was vivid Technicolor. So I want to just tell you that at the time of my defense, my proposal defense on February the 12th of this year, this data analysis procedure was black and white. But actually moving into chapter 4, things came together and the findings gave me the Technicolor, the vibrant images and the story that I needed to connect the concepts that I need to understand. So that's why that was very important for me to go back. Now I'm excited to share my research findings. Of those findings and of saturating those codes and themes, we emerged upon 4 emergent themes. The first being emotional literacy. The second being perspective taking. The third, student engagement. And the 4th emergent theme, instructional practices. So now for the summary of findings and our literature connections. For RQ1, how can short animated films be used as a pedagogical tool for the teaching of empathy-based learning? According to the literature, empathy enables the sharing of experiences between individuals and provides an emotional bridge that promotes pro-social behavior. Utilizing EBL teaching strategies to learn social studies content can result in a more humanitarian worldview that benefits all members of society. There were participant statements that supported RQ1. They included participants sharing that through visual representations, students could better learn to identify feelings and emotions, which could be a significant outcome of film use in the social studies classroom. Also, the impact of visual representation was a common theme among participants who described how film offered a unique approach to learning and could support the teaching of concepts related to human emotions. The connected themes were theme 1, emotional literacy, and theme 2, perspective taking. For RQ2, what are the pedagogical benefits of using short animated films for the teaching of empathy-based learning? According to the literature, researchers have asserted that education is a human endeavor. At its core are relationships, the ability of one individual to connect with and understand another, which is an essential aspect of perspective taking. Film use might help adolescents see the similarities between themselves and their peers, while at the same time perceiving differences as paths to new perspectives rather than possible threats. Participant statements that supported RQ2 were participants indicating a positive relationship between film use as an instructional tool and cultivating perspective taking among students, as they have an opportunity to witness the lived experience of another through a visual medium. Participants also indicated the belief that when students are able to make a connection to a film that models some aspect of the human experience, they can learn to do the same with real life people whose lived experiences are different from their own. The connected themes were emergent theme 1, emotional literacy, emergent theme 2, perspective taking, and emergent theme 3, student engagement. For RQ3, what are the challenges associated with using short animated films for the teaching of empathy-based learning? According to the literature, currently, there is no widely agreed upon methodology or pedagogical practice for the inclusion of film education in the contemporary classroom. While film use as a pedagogical tool may bridge an instructional gap, teachers must be comfortable with its usage. Participant statements that supported RQ3 were responses indicated the belief that teachers would need guidance on best practices for using film as an instructional tool in the social studies classroom and in other areas of the curriculum. Additionally, participant responses indicated that the teaching staff would need to be shown different ways of using film, how to make proper selections, and how to engage students during and after. Critical when showing film in the classroom, according to the literature. This is connected to emergent theme 4, instructional practices. For RQ4, what are the beliefs of middle school teachers regarding the use of short animated films as an instructional tool? According to the literature, Chu observed that film can also be utilized as a tool to help students understand how literacy devices are used in prose. There's a concept called filmic language, and this is what that citation refers to. Also, the majority of learners today have a predilection for visual, auditory, and manipulative learning modalities, and the majority of the information they receive comes from a screen. Participant statements that supported RQ4 were that participants felt, they indicated rather, the belief that film use provides another form of instruction in the classroom and creates a different level of engagement, and that film is more accessible than traditional lecture and reading. This was connected to emergent theme 3, student engagement, and emergent theme 4, instructional practices. For RQ5, how can short animated films contextualize empathy-based learning? According to the literature, incorporating film into a lesson in the classroom improves students' critical thinking and offers opportunities for introspection, for looking inward. Also, researchers found that for the effective use of films in education, teachers should be educated efficiently on the use of film as an educational tool. Participant statements that supported this, RQ5, were that responses indicated the belief that film use provides another form of instruction in the classroom and creates a different level of engagement for students. Additionally, participants responded that teaching with film is a skill set they would like to learn via professional development opportunities. This connects to emergent themes 3, student engagement, and emergent theme 4, instructional practices. Now I'd like to present my conclusions. For RQ1, how can short animated films be used as a pedagogical tool for the teaching of empathy-based learning? Participants shared that through visual representation, students could better learn to identify feelings and emotions, which could be a significant learning outcome of film use in the social studies classroom. And this connects to emergent theme 1, emotional literacy, and emergent theme 2, perspective taking. For RQ2, what are the pedagogical benefits of using short animated films for the teaching of empathy-based learning? Well, the impact of visual representation was a common theme among participants who described how film offered a unique approach to learning and could support the teaching of concepts related to teaching about human emotions. Additionally, participants' responses indicated that the belief that when students are able to make a connection to a film that models some aspect of an authentic human experience, they can learn to do the same with people in real life. This connected to 3 emergent themes: emergent theme 1, emotional literacy; emergent theme 2, perspective taking; and emergent theme 3, student engagement. For RQ3, what are the challenges associated with using short animated films for the teaching of empathy-based learning? Participants' responses indicated that many teachers would require guidance on best practices for using film as an instructional tool. Additionally, teaching staff would need to be shown different ways of using film, how to make the proper selections, and how to engage students in meaningful discussion or activities during and after viewing. This connected to emergent theme 4, instructional practices. For RQ4, what are the beliefs of middle school teachers regarding the use of short animated films as an instructional tool? Participant responses indicated the belief that film use provides another form of instruction in the classroom. It creates a different level of engagement among students and is more accessible than lecture or reading. And this connected to emergent theme 3, student engagement, and emergent theme 4, instructional practices. And for RQ5, how can short animated films be used to contextualize empathy-based learning? Participant responses indicated that through visual representations, students could better learn to identify feelings, emotions, and the lived experience of characters, which could contextualize the concept of empathy in the social studies classroom. Additionally, participants emphasized the unique ability of film to present emotions and feelings in a way that textbooks cannot. This connected to two emergent themes: 3, student engagement, and emergent theme 4, instructional practices. Now I will lead the discussion section. The implications of this study. All right, the findings of this study highlight the strengths of film use as a pedagogical tool for the teaching of empathy-based learning in middle school social studies. Based on participant responses, the use of film as an instructional tool can enhance learning outcomes through helping students identify feelings and emotions, make connections to people whose lived experiences are different from their own, and become more actively engaged in social studies education. These findings are useful not only for enhancing the educational experience of students, but may also be used in the design of professional development opportunities aimed at fostering effective teaching strategies with film. Moreover, the findings of this study could support school districts in the training of teaching staff on the various ways in which they may use film as a purposeful learning tool that has the potential to engage all students and create civil classroom communities where students cultivate humanitarian dispositions. It is recommended that researchers should investigate the perceptions of middle school students in order to gain a more thorough grasp of the educational benefits of using films as instructional tools in the social studies classroom. These findings are useful not only for enhancing the educational experience of students, but may also be used for professional development opportunities, designing them rather, aimed at fostering effective teaching strategies. Another recommendation is, so the results of the present qualitative study cannot be extrapolated to a wider population due to the limited sample size, 9 middle school instructors and instructional coaches. Therefore, the present study had an insufficient number of participants to establish the generalizability of its findings across different demographic groups. Results from a quantitative approach that potentially utilizes a measurement scale would both expand this study and add a generalizability that is missing from its findings. Lastly, future research should investigate the possibility of utilizing films as a form of text in English language arts instruction, ELA. The prevailing notion that the written word is the sole reliable source of academic material stems from a lack of comprehensive understanding of the expansive nature of text. I mentioned earlier how film could be used as text, that's filmic language. A prospective study could examine teachers' perspectives and broaden their comprehension of visual text to encompass modalities beyond written language. This analysis could also explore the possibility of promoting film as an alternative medium of communication in the English language arts classroom. In summary, findings from this study align with the principles of transformative learning theory, which underpinned this study. Further, the study's findings suggest that the use of film as an instructional tool can enhance learning outcomes through helping students identify feelings and emotions. Findings from the study are congruent with best practices from existing literature that provide a contextual framework for film use in the classroom. Its conclusions add to that existing literature by filling a gap and contributing valuable insights that can broaden teachers' perspectives and increase student engagement and motivation for learning. The study's findings can be used to create professional development sessions for K-12 teachers, demonstrating how film can be operationalized as a teaching modality that can engage students and yield outcomes that support the development of emotional literacy and perspective-taking abilities. Further, the findings from this study can be utilized to expand the discussion on the potential of film and other media to serve as entry points for deeper learning in K-12 school districts across the country. Let's share my references. At this time, Dr. Wendy Cotton, the dissertation co-chair, will now moderate the question and answer session. Thank you again for your time.
Mr. Blackwell, thank you for such an outstanding presentation of your research study. Your work has clearly demonstrated a deep understanding of the subject matter and an impressive command of the research process. So congratulations on your success thus far with your presentation of research. At this point, we will open up the session for questions, starting with the committee members. And afterward, we will invite the chair of the Department of Education and the director of Hampton University Online to share any comments or questions. We might also give other guests the opportunity to speak, Devan, as you have pre-selected. So let's start with Dr. Cason.
Good afternoon again, Dr. Blackwell. I shared with you while we were waiting that of the three films, the one that I most related to was Bloom. I really enjoyed that film. You talked about data saturation quite a few times, which is a very important part of qualitative research. Even with the data saturation, were there any outliers for you? Were there any findings that you weren't quite participating that did arrive?
Dr. Cason, thank you for that question. Actually, no, there were so many codes and themes that I was kind of swimming through for about a month or so. When I mentioned saturating that data, it was finding commonalities, finding links. And again, I mentioned how that Braun and Clark 6-step was black and white to me until I began that process. And going through the data actually added the color because I got to see, okay, this is a theme. So for example, if I saw walking in someone's shoes, seeing through the lens of, I would say, great, that goes in the bucket under perspective taking. And, you know, the other ones were the same. I thought I had about 40 some themes and codes, but it was narrowing them down and seeing which buckets had the most. And the emergent themes, the 4 that I chose, were the ones that had the most responses from the participants. So there were really no outliers. You know, I'm sorry, let me take that back. And I guess you can say this is an outlier in terms of participant responses. One of the films, Bear Story, which was about a circus bear being enslaved, there were a few comments from viewers that compared it to the Holocaust, compared it to slavery here in America. And that was something that came up a lot. But in diving into those responses, they also were connected to perspective taking and emotional literacy. People asking themselves the question, how could they have survived that experience? What did people have in them that helped them to be resilient and survive those atrocities? So in terms of outliers, those might have been on the side, but again, when oversaturating that data, I realized they did have a place in the emergent themes themselves.
Thank you for that. And one other question is, I know you referenced that you had to narrow it down from which films you were going to select. And you don't have to give a brief reason why you selected these particular 3, but how were you able to narrow it down between all the films that you were looking to include?
All right, thank you for that question. Another really good one. And so I was getting lost in film, and I kept thinking, I need to be writing. I need to be out working with these groups. And of course, I did a graduate study experience in Canada, and I got to work with filmmakers and animators, and I was exposed to all different kinds of films. But Bear Story came from Egan Simon's study. His study actually inspired me to pursue animated film, short animated film. So Bear Story was definitely going to go in. And then when I thought about something like Alike and how the characters were human-esque, right? They weren't exactly people, but they represented people. I thought that would be a good one to use, especially with the pressure that's put on lots of young people to succeed at school. I also thought about what's happening, a lot of LGBTQ LGBTQ+ communities, with young people coming to school and not feeling that they're in the right bodies. And maybe, that was representative of that as well. And for Bloom, just based on the data that I received in my day job, there's been such an uptick in mental health emergencies, crises in districts, not just with students, parents. So adults are also struggling. So Bloom was the last film I selected. And I told you, I was not sure if that would be the one, but I watched it a few times. And I'm so glad that I selected that, because of the three, Bloom was the one. Now, I was in the room during these screenings, and Bloom was the one where I, in each of the three screenings, I did see people wiping their eyes after that. There was something resonant about Nadine's journey. I think we can all relate to loneliness at times and feeling isolated, especially during the pandemic. So that's how I chose those three films. Hope that answered your question.
It absolutely does. Last thing is more of a comment. I have a couple of my counseling students on. You said something that was very important, and I hope everyone heard. You mentioned that you did your proposal defense in February, and here we are in November. But what was important to you and your committee is that this was not a rushed work. We were not in a race. We wanted a quality product, and that was evident that that's what you gave us this afternoon. And with that, I am complete, Dr. Cotton.
As a Cason, thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cason. Dr. Stephanie Johnson.
Good afternoon, everyone. Because Devan, you were so thorough, there's not a lot to ask, but I just want to make some comments and maybe one question. I love the organization of your slide presentation, and especially the photo that goes along with the lit review. I also love that definition that I never heard of before, perspective taking. Now, what I enjoy more about this than anything else is, you as a researcher actually sat in all those classrooms and watched the responses. And that was a powerful play when you're talking about good research. You didn't go about what somebody else said or saw, you saw it yourself. You in the films, my favorite film was the one with the child and his parents. What was the name of that one?
The Child and His Parents. Was it animated?
It was the first one.
Oh, I'm sorry. Alike, the ones I used.
Okay. Alike.
Yes.
It just spoke to the fact that oftentimes parents don't listen. And it said a lot of different things to me, and I'm sure it said a lot of different things to somebody else. And that's why I love the idea of you doing this on film, because everybody takes away something different. But why do you think people aren't using that tool in the schools when we know, and you've already said it, you already put it in the paper, we know that we can take students so much further, we can increase their engagement, we can broaden teacher perspective. What do you think from the old school that causes people not to engage in the use of film?
Okay, Dr. Johnson, thank you for your questions and your comments. So I will answer that question in two ways. When I was teaching, I had a principal, Mrs. Caldwell. I think she might be here today. But Mrs. Caldwell, remember, told us, the teaching staff once, if your lights are off and I see a film being shown, it had better be in your lesson plans. So I became quite good at looking at films and watching them at home and taking out learning outcomes that I wanted my students to pull from. And again, it was a visual medium. I knew I had a lot of students who had attention issues. So I used it. I was comfortable because I'm a lover of film. What I found from the participants and others who have come along and given feedback about the study is, while this is a novel approach, people think, and again, we know that sometimes folks have lesson plans or grades or they turn on the TV, but to be intentional about using film, people don't know where to start. And there's also that fear, especially now, of what can I show? Is the content appropriate for everybody? Will this scene trigger somebody? And what I found is that you don't have to show an entire film. You can show clips. And every teacher that shows a film needs to preview that film before and get an idea of learning outcomes. What points do you want to hit? And that pre-discussion and the post-discussion is essential. And as you said about me being in the room with the participants, in a qualitative study, the researcher is also an instrument, him or herself. And I took that role very seriously. And again, I did not want it to invalidate anything what I found by any biases, but to the first idea was maybe to send these films to them and then get feedback. But it was so powerful for me to be in that room with strangers, people I did not know, and to almost be invisible and to hear them unpack the films. As they talked, they could reveal things about themselves, the adults in the room. And while those revelations were personal, they were about the film. So there was still that protection of, I'm talking about the character, not myself. And a lot of people resonated with Nadine in Bloom, but also, like you said, alike, how the life was choked out of that young man because he wasn't allowed to be his artistic, creative self. So those were things I wouldn't have seen, and they wouldn't have given the technicolor to this study that I needed. So thank you for that, Dr. John.
And I just want to, on this little tidbit, when you said your principal, and that's how I was. And in December of one year, a kindergarten teacher had shown 125 films. So that's another lean towards why people don't allow it, because she didn't have it on her plans, and so behind the door and then come out, and probably didn't show any more that year. But that wasn't the purpose. The purpose was to make sure they had something in their plans that related to what they were teaching. So thank you. It was wonderful, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson.
I'm done, Doctor.
Thank you. Thank you.
Dr. Cotton. Dr. Jallim-Hall has me all mixed up with who's Cotton and who's Cason there. Okay, thank you, Dr. Jallim-Hall, for that.
We're used to it, right? Dr.
Right. Cotton, Cason. You know what I'm talking. You know what, like my grandma used to say.
You know who I'm talking to. All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Johnson, Dr. Stephanie Williams. I know that you are under the weather, but would you like to have any comments?
I would. Thank you.
All right.
First of all, I want to say I am honored to be on your committee. As a previous social studies teacher, being a certified school counselor and an LPC, it is all within my wheelhouse. You have a very rich product here, Devan. You really do. It shows that your work was very intentional. Even with you in your presentation, I can tell that it's something that you're passionate about and that you actually believe in. And it's not a topic you just picked and said, oh, well, this will be something easy. Let me get this done. So in that, I am so proud. And it makes me think of Frederick Douglass's quote, "It is easier to build strong children than to repair broken men." And when we bring this into our classrooms, we can build partnerships. And so my wheels are going, even though I'm on the high school level, and thinking what teachers I can partner with as a counselor and being a part of this process if they were to use this type of film. So given even your current position in your district, I really want to see where this go, where you take this, and how you further develop it. It is awesome.
Dr. Williams, thank you so much. I will say you came along at the exact right time. And you remember my focus was, I thought this study was about film. Mm-hmm. And it was you who, after my proposal defense, and I thought I was
done,
going to be successful. But you said, no, this study is about empathy.
Yeah.
And that changed everything, because it really was about empathy. And I'll tell you, that was the lifeline I needed for this study. It has been so helpful. So you were instrumental in that. So you came along at the right time. You were a blessing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Devan, thank you so much, Dr. Williams. Ooh, I don't have a lot to add, but I'm full because I can relate to Dr. Williams. Both of us have a background in social studies education. And I did that for about 16, 17 years before my current role. And I used film as a medium to teach. I didn't know it was research-based. I just knew, something in me knew that would help my students learn the concepts that they needed to learn and remember things they needed to remember and connect to different historical events and government concepts and so forth. And it did. I had no idea it was research based. I just knew I loved it, and it made me a better teacher. So I applaud you for putting some teeth on this and making it something that you can take and redeliver and further develop. On slide 16, and you don't have to pull it up, but you had a quote there, Devan, that said, to empathize is to civilize. And I know you and I have had some dialogues about that in a political context where we could just pull out certain themes that made your work very relevant. So I just want to thank you for the commitment that you put into this research. I don't really honestly have any questions. And also, when you talked about Braun and Clark's 6-phase approach and the connection to your own personal experience as a neurodivergent person and how that helped you make a connection to everything, that really stuck with me. And it just, I don't know, it almost made me emotional just thinking about other students, like kids who could be reached in that manner, and just really re-emphasized or confirmed the important work that we do as educators. And so that's my comment. And Dr. Jallim-Hall, I will turn it over to you for your comments. She is the chair of the advisory committee.
Thank you, Dr. Cotton. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cotton. Mr. Blackwell, thank you so much for an exceptional research and also the presentation of the research. When you came to me with this topic, you recall I was very excited because I too have used film. I have used film all my life in higher ed. And one of the Cottons and the Casons, I taught them in the master's program, so they're very aware of my usage of film. But I didn't really know how to conceptualize all of the things based in your findings. I'm just so excited and even more energized to use it and also to teach it to the undergraduate students that I work with. So I really want to commend you on your research. Very well done.
Thank you.
Given your passion, you're so passionate about this. And we all were. I mean, we all were just so invested in you and invested in your topic. And you were doing something we've been using, but never known how to really conceptualize all of it, much less assess it, right? How did you manage your own biases or assumptions to ensure that they did not influence your interpretation?
Well, thank you, Dr. Jallim-Hall. That is a great question. I was worried. I was worried because I came into this, again, being one of the instruments. I came in with a lifelong love of cinema and a belief that it would be this powerful transformative tool. But in going back to that Braun and Clark 6-step, when I saw that by the time I got to chapter 3 and the methodology was paved out, I realized I'm a storyteller, but I couldn't tell this story. I had to let the data tell me what the story was. I had the questions, I had the guardrails or the framework, those 5 questions, but the data itself would tell me what that story was. And that's when I said the color came in, the Technicolor. And I told Dr. Cotton, and you also, that chapter 4 was the hardest part for me to make sense of because I was buried in so many words. And from that, I saw how the story connected RQ1, RQ2, and onto RQ5. So while I was very pleased with the story that I had in my grasp on Delve and the software I used, my biases were not there because I resigned myself to saying, all right, this is what I want the story to be, but I can't write it. It's going to write itself. And those 9 participants were the way that it was written, and it was authentically from their voices, but it did support the questions that I had conceptualized. So yes, I hope I answered your question. I really was concerned about researcher bias and my positionality in all of this, but in the end, I just let it teach me. Mm-hmm. And those questions that we workshopped and whittled down, I didn't know. Those are the ones, but then they felt like the right ones. And then the film, so it all together came and told me what the outcomes were going to be. And it told me this. So the findings themselves actually informed, and I was pleasantly surprised.
Okay. Tell your colleagues about the challenges of, conducting research. Not the many all caps responses you received from me, but just all, all of the challenges that you received, that you endured. Yes. About yourself personally, just undertaking the whole research process. Was it easy? Was it challenging? What did you do to overcome these challenges?
Oh, this was the most challenging pursuit of my life. I got a sty fooling around with this research from stress. But I will say, and I think it was you and a few other of my advisors, I had never done this before. So it was all new. And Dr. Charbonnet had mentioned before about this being a journey. And, a lot of us are impatient. We want to get through this journey. We want to be done. We want to be done. And that kept coming back to me. Like, this is a journey, and all the things I was able to do and my understanding of the concepts of the process. I did my proposal defense in February, and then it was the new challenge of the IRB process. What is that? And luckily I had 2 classmates. We were doing it together and submitting that and waiting the 2 weeks for the response, which came back signed and approved. But then it was reaching out to school districts. Mm-hmm. And people, since 2020, people told me, when you're ready, you come to my district. I got you. Well, when the time came, we had spring break. We had union issues at certain schools. We had somebody who was no longer a superintendent by the time it was time for me to do all this. So there were things that were out of my control. But during that time, because I waited 2 months before I actually went in onto a site. So 2 months after I did my proposal defenses, when I actually went to these school districts, I did them all in 1 week. I begged them all. I said, I will come there. I want to get this done. But in that time, I got to narrow down the films. I was still curating at the time, because it was 3 to 5 films, and it became those 3. And then my first group was just a practice session. And I realized, wait a minute, well, I can't just practice. I've got to do the same exact thing with each group. Mm-hmm. Right? So it's valid. So this was just a process of learning. And again, I want to thank you, especially because you and I have had lots of talks, and you've talked me off the ledge many, many times. That frustration with oneself when one doesn't know something. But the reminder from this committee that you wouldn't know it, Devin, because you haven't done it before. You're learning this. And I'll also say that, my self-identity as a scholar was not always so positive. But this experience is the first time I was proud of myself as a scholar, as someone who did those late nights and drove to these districts and then got mired in all of these words and said, what have I done? But then it all came to me. So I was proud of myself, and I was thankful that I had people who were understanding, like yourself and the other 4 members of the committee, because that helped me as well. So if I could tell anybody something that could help them along their journey, it's to, again, as Dr. Charbonnet said, enjoy the journey, but also be an active participant in that journey. When you're waiting for feedback, be doing something else. For me, that was looking at films. When I had the films ready, I'm waiting for the schools. Okay, now I'm going to rehearse how I'm going to be the instrument in that room. and be as unobtrusive as I can. I don't want them to be influenced by me. So
Mhm.
there were times when I was kind of left and felt untethered, but realized I can be doing something. And hopefully the next time I speak with Dr. Jallim-Hall and Dr. Cotton, they will have seen some progress. So I hope that answers your question. There were lots of challenges along the way, but I had support. And I want to thank you all, but also my family and my friends who didn't know probably what I was really doing for the past 4 years. And somebody said I was getting a PhD in cartoons, but people to understand now what I was actually doing and how I am really passionate about this. And also, a lot of this was planning for the future. I want this to lead to international work. I have made connections with filmmakers and scholars who study film, and I was like a unicorn with a lot of these filmmakers who invite me to their studios and didn't really know what a scholar was going to make of what they were doing, but it helped me to see the process and how they say, yes, I do want people to feel. I'm using this scene, I'm using this music to evoke emotions. So
Absolutely.
I'm excited about the future of this. And I thank you for you being so excited about this too.
All right. Thank you so much. I do have one more assignment for you. I would like you to think about the process for creating the criteria for operationalizing film as an instructional tool. Because LaShonda is working on something similar with science, and so is Demetrius. He wants to use anime, I believe,
All
or
right.
imagery to teach science, if I'm correct. So I want to make sure that they work with you as well. And Dr. Cotton, I will yield the rest of my time to others because I know they have a lot of questions and comments.
Thank you,
Thank
Dr.
you. Thank you so much, Dr. Jallim-Hall. Dr. Denise Charbonnet, the chair of the Department of Education, would you like to have some words?
Yes, and I'm going to be brief because I know that we've taken up, quite a bit of the time, but I want to say cutting edge, kudos. And it really takes courage and guts to do something different, something that everybody else isn't doing. I applaud you and I applaud Dr. Jallim-Hall for taking this on because it was different. And I also want to say, having taught social studies at various levels in the elementary curriculum, but specifically in Virginia and Louisiana, where the state curriculum has a lot of emotional content that deals with a time in our history where we struggled as a people. The things that you're talking about and the themes are just relevant and critical. And, as a person who's taught in a lot of Title I schools and students who have had difficulty with reading and understanding written content in the curriculum, film has been so powerful because the students do understand film. They know what they're looking at, they can relate. And so this is just, I think it's powerful that you've done research in this area because this brings to life things that we as educators already know, and we relate to everything that you've done, but you bring a different level of validation to this kind of work. I'm excited about it, and I hope that educators see that maybe instead of a textbook, a film series would be very relevant in some of these areas. So I believe that's what you bring to the table, and I'm hoping that we have exposure to your work moving forward.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for what you've done.
Thank you, Dr. Charbonnet. I appreciate all that. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Charbonnet. I see Dr. Ricardo Randall. Would you like to have any comments or questions of the candidate?
Good afternoon. Mr. Blackwell, I am so truly impressed with this. I worked in education 32 years, and I also worked in middle schools, but I taught middle school science. And what you just presented validated when I taught science. I use National Geographic films, um, and I would stop and discuss information with students, and we would talk about different concepts related to the standards of learning. So your work is, I mean, I'm blown away with this one. And I'm very impressed by the fact that you chose a topic that is needed to be to exposed. I had a lot of questions, but I'm not going to ask them. But my question to you is this: if you had to create a professional development workshop for a faculty, what would you do? What strategies would you present? What would you do?
All right, Dr. Randall, thank you. Thank you for those words. And we can always talk offline and about those questions you had. We can always set up a call. But to answer your question, so in my downtime, which is, almost non-existent, I have been creating a framework to work with teachers, the use of cinema as a teaching modality. And I'm going to use a lot of the approach that I took with my participant groups. I think the pre-exposure to the content is critical. So basically, I would like to have kind of buckets. So basically, if you're learning outcomes or social emotional learning, if you want to create a culture of belonging, if you want to talk about bullying, things of that nature, there will be different films that can be recommended for those learning outcomes. But also, as I said before, the dialogic aspect is so important. So everyone, it doesn't come naturally to. I remember being in front of a class. There was a gang issue happening in one of the Title I schools that I taught in. And I remember we were reading The Outsiders. Now, the kids were certainly not as excited about The Outsiders, but I presented it. I mentioned gangs, and they knew what that meant. I also mentioned how the author, S.E. Hinton, got a D in creative writing in school. So I said, anybody ever got a D? All the hands went up, right? I said, well, do you know the person that got a D wrote this classic novel, and it's also a movie? So I would kind of bait them along by saying, let's read one chapter, then we'll watch some of the film, and you can tell me what was better, why it was better, why it was different. And that was addressing something that was happening in a neighborhood, but they had the language to talk about it. And they had, statements like, I can relate to Pony Boy because I don't want to fight. I don't want to carry a knife. I don't want to. It was a group of boys that were hard to reach. A group that teachers gave to me and said, Devan, I'm really sorry, but I got to give you these 4 words. And I said, great, that's a great challenge. How can I reach them? And it was with film. And again, they were reluctant readers. But again, so I think that with teachers, I would like to the consultations will be important to see because there's no one size fits all model. And I'd like to have kind of a framework that I use, but one that can be finessed and changed to fit the climate and the district that needs it. So somebody might not have any gangs. Somebody just might have kids who are bullying each other, might have kids who are still having emotional challenges. There's school trauma. There's all kinds of things happening right now. So sitting down and kind of tailoring a curriculum or a learning experience for that individual classroom or that pod of teachers is, I think, the way that I'd like to present it. And again, like this study, it will evolve over time, but I'm definitely ready to launch a pilot, hopefully in the spring. And I will definitely keep Hampton abreast of that and connected to what I'm doing with this, because I'm not going to stop. And I'm thinking about this every day, all day. So yeah, hope that answered your question, sir.
Yes, sir. And stellar work, stellar presentation. And the committee, y'all did a great job with this. I'm very impressed. And you have to present somewhere. It's not you have to present this somewhere. So I'm looking forward to further information from you. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Randall, Devan is being very modest, but this young man is going all over the world presenting. already. But I'll let him tell his story though. He's very modest, so we're just happy that Hampton University's name is attached to this. Makes us very proud, very proud. So, Devin, thank you so much, Dr. Randall, and I think that concludes with the academic community at Hampton. I know that you have some special guests on here. Your parents are here. I see Mrs. Blackwell and your aunt and uncle
Yes.
from Richmond, Uncle
Uncle
Ron.
Ron is why I'm here. He's a Hampton graduate, y'all. He is one of the original Ogre members.
I just told Dr. Jallim-Hall he's an original ogre. Like, that's phenomenal.
He's the reason why I'm here. Uncle Ron, this is about legacy. He's the reason I chose Hampton finally to become two Hampton men in our family. I'm very proud of that.
Okay, so Uncle Ron, would you like to have any words?
Yes, very briefly. On behalf of the Brown Blackwell family, we would like to extend our heartfelt congratulations to our shining star, doctoral candidate Devan Mark Blackwell. We're extremely proud of the hard work and dedication which has led to this highest of honors, a doctoral degree from Hampton University. As a proud alum, it has always been my dream to have another member of our family share an HBCU experience, especially at our distinguished university. Devan last visited our home by the sea 50 years ago as a toddler when he attended my graduation from Hampton Institute. It's been a long time in the making, but welcome to the club.
Thank you. Love y'all. Thank you. Thank you. Auntie. Thank you.
Thank you. Auntie Lissa, do you want to have any words?
Ditto.
Okay, ditto. All right. Okay, we'll take it. And Mrs. Blackwell, did you want to say anything? Does your mom want to talk, Devin?
I don't know. I think
Okay.
I'm a little camera shy.
Okay, that's okay.
Okay, I unmuted myself.
Hey, Mom, there you are.
I just want to say that we're very proud of Devin. And I also want to thank you, Dr. Cotton, Dr. Jallim-Hall, and all the names I've heard over these last years for all the support that you've given him. And it's really made me feel good to know that my son had the support that he's had. So I just want to say thank you to each and every one of you who are also sharing in this joy today with our family. So thanks again, everyone.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Blackwell. We are crazy about Devin, and we are proud to have him at Hampton University. So thank you so much. So at this time, Dr. Hall, do you want to make the announcement for us to go to the other room?
You can go ahead, Dr. Cotton.
Okay. So at this time, the committee members will retreat to the breakout room where we will deliberate on the final disposition. And Devin and guests can remain in the main room. And we will, maybe y'all can talk about, your study or ask them questions, but we'll be in the breakout room for a little bit.
I see some people from Canada here.
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot about you. I forgot about
my Canadian friends are here. I did my research at Concordia University in Montreal. A piece of my heart is in Canada. And one day I think all of me might be over in Canada. But I love them so much. And I thank you for all of the support you gave me. Dr. Mayo. Yes. Is there a breakout room that we should join, Dr. Cotton?
No, you should stay. We're going to join. Right. You stay here.
All right. Okay. I just want to thank everybody again for being here. I couldn't read the chat, but thank you, Uncle.
Make us
That was
proud.
quite a
Thank you.
speech, sir. That was quite a
Yeah.
speech, sir.
You did an excellent job.
Oh, yes, it's
I-
beautiful.
Yeah.
As
Yeah.
one of his aunties, this is
Auntie!
I am so proud, but
Sure.
I'm not surprised. He has always made us proud and been so dedicated watching him grow up. So
Uh-oh, I think she meant to stop it.
Oh, yeah, let me go back. Sorry. Let me go back and stop it. Oh, I can stop it.